The Batman is the latest film to focus on the title character of Batman, this time around played by Robert Pattinson. It takes place in the modern day, but it is year 2 of this Bruce Wayne being Batman. He's still trying to figure stuff out. He's still trying to work out the kinks of being Batman. And then dropped in his lap is this case on this guy named the Riddler, who's elusive from the police. They need to find him. He's leaving behind riddles for Batman specifically to solve. He's got a big plan and targets picked out, and it's up to Batman, Jim Gordon, Catwoman to stop him. This movie has a long history, you know, back when it was originally supposed to be a solo Ben Affleck Batman movie, when BVS and Justice League originally were coming out. They were going to have a solo movie with Ben Affleck, who was going to be also directing and writing, and then, you know, a bunch of stuff started to fall through. He exited the director's chair, and then ultimately Matt Reeves came in, but then that's when Ben Affleck ultimately decided it was going to be best to leave the role entirely. So they didn't use the script, he left the role, and Matt Reeves was free to do whatever it is he wanted with no ties to any of the Justice League cinematic universe stuff. He was just free to make his own Batman Matt Reeves universe, which is great. You know, I absolutely love, even though obviously it would be great to see a Batman that works in like a cinematic universe way, I do like how Matt Reeves just had total creative control to just make a story that just works as a good story. Because I think Matt Reeves is an excellent storyteller, an excellent filmmaker. Cloverfield is a movie that might not be his best, but it's a movie that is really important for me because I saw it at like just the right age where I was kind of like obsessed with it for many, many years. I still kind of am. I really enjoy that movie a lot. Let Me In, his remake of Let the Right One In, is actually pretty good, all things considered, you know, with that original movie being really, really, really good. He made a remake that I think is just so beautifully shot and well done. And then of course when it comes to like his bigger blockbuster movies, Dawn and War of the Planet of the Apes being some of the best big blockbuster movies out there, you know, so I knew Matt Reeves could totally tell a story here with this Batman movie that had the greatest filmmaking you could possibly want out of a Batman movie, as well as having something legitimate to say, you know, there's something you will get out of it of substance as opposed to it's just a movie where Batman does cool stuff or anything like that. So I was incredibly excited going into this movie, and when the cast was starting to get beefed up, you know, it only added to my anticipation for this thing, and I'm happy to report that this movie delivered in pretty much every single way. I don't think I have a single flaw with this movie. Sorry to spoil that, but I don't think there's a single thing that stands out as far as me going like, oh, well, that was bad, or that wasn't as good as anything else, or maybe that should have been cut. Everything worked for me, and I think this is one of the best movies of this year so far. I know it's only March, but wow, like if this movie came out in October of last year like it was originally kind of supposed to, I would say it was one of the best of last year as well. Let me just get the obvious out of the way that I really, really love kind of the era of blockbusters we're in, especially coming from Warner Brothers, where, you know, it seems like they have learned from their mistakes of, you know, trying to neuter Zack Snyder's Justice League movie, where they're like, okay, let's just have creative auteur-like people come in and just do whatever. You know, we've seen that with Denis Villeneuve doing Dune, James Gunn with the Suicide Squad, James Wan even when he made that Aquaman movie, fucking insane how fucking crazy that movie is, but, you know, it's totally James Wan, and, you know, that trend kind of continues with Matt Reeves and the Batman. I just really love how when the movie starts, you're off-put, you know, like immediately. You know, this is a movie that even though it's PG-13, it's a hard PG-13, and they get away with a lot of stuff that you probably normally wouldn't see in a Batman movie, but it works all the better here. You know, this is definitely written as a noir film. You know, you have instances where Bruce Wayne is kind of narrating in that noir, you know, kind of way, and it absolutely works for the storytelling, you know, because this Bruce Wayne is still really early on into being Batman. He's still trying to work out what it is to be Batman, but even though it's just his second year as the character, you know, he thinks he has it mostly figured out, you know, he thinks this is what I am, I'm doing everything kind of right, so yeah, like, I think I got this. So him, like, having a diary and then, like, narrating from it to give to this, like, whole noir vibe, I think absolutely works. You know, Bruce Wayne is kind of, in this movie, kind of like a perfect embodiment of, like, a noir lead character, like a darker, you know, more secluded lead character. Like I said earlier, you know, this is the first couple outings as him being Batman. So his Bruce Wayne even doesn't even have like, you know, how most Bruce Waynes are is like, you know, when they go out in public, they're like, hey, I've worked up the charm, and what's this Batman fellow? That's pretty crazy. You know, kind of building up this illusion of like, I might be rich and I'm kind of a playboy, do whatever I want, but I don't know about this Batman guy. I don't even know what that is. You know, I don't, who wants to save the city, right? This version of Bruce Wayne is not there yet. You know, he's been so like that billionaire who's been like so secluded and away from everyone, as even like people in, you know, his business and, you know, top officials in the city. So he's just like a shut-in weirdo, and whenever he comes out in public, people are like, oh my god, is that Bruce Wayne? He's here? Oh my god. You know, and I think it works so well to illustrate, you know, what kind of mental state, you know, you would have to be in to take on like this persona of beating up bad guys in the street, you know, all night, never sleeping practically. But it's all in service of the story and the theme of this movie of how, without spoiling a whole lot, you know, how people process trauma or grief or, you know, troubled pasts, and how they process that. And sometimes it's processed in a bad, negative way, in the worst way possible, where you're consumed by, you know, hate, revenge, vengeance, and how, you know, you have to be better than those feelings to you know, pave the way for a better world, to actually properly heal from said trauma, you know, to get out of this darkness. And that being the theme of the movie, I thought is excellent for a Batman, especially a Batman who's just starting out and still trying to, you know, even though it's been like 20 years or so since, you know, his parents got shot, who is still trying to move forward from that. He keeps going out at night, you know, with this mindset of like, you know, revenge and hate, but there is a way for him to heal from that and be a better version of the Bat, of himself even. So in the midst of this kind of dark noir kind of storytelling, you know, when they do have to start incorporating, you know, the larger superhero elements and the more like, you know, character beats, where, you know, Bruce Wayne or somebody else is making a character arc, a change or something like that, it still all works and everything flows. You know, this movie, despite it being almost 3 hours long, including credits, there's not one bit that I would cut. There's not one bit where I was like, well, you know, that could be removed and nothing really changes. I was like, I want everything this movie is giving to me. There's plenty of moments where they just let scenes kind of play out and there's no like quick edits to get scenes over with. You're in the moment with Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne, and he's like looking around, he's studying everything as Bruce Wayne and Batman. He does this, and it's excellent staging from Matt Reeves, excellent direction, and just wonderful acting from Robert Pattinson. I think he is excellent as the character. It's hard to compare him to everyone else since this is his first movie and everyone else has had at least a couple others, you know, at least, you know, Keaton or Bale, some of the best ones. Will Arnett is Lego Batman. But, you know, in this instance, he, you know, even though it's hard to compare, he makes quite the impression as the character. And if it's not the best, it's definitely one of my personal favorite performances as this character. And then somebody else who also threatens to steal this movie from Pattinson, Paul Dano as the Riddler. I absolutely love this version of the Riddler. Obviously, Jim Carrey's iconic for, you know, the comedy of it all, you know, and Riddler is usually just a goofy, funny character. But I really like, you know, I like the Zodiac killer kind of do-up they do with the Riddler. You know, that mask is fucking creepy, you know, and just having like the Paul Dano glasses over it too, you know, it's a really great idea, especially him being like this notorious kind of serial killer who's got a larger plan and he's got some, you know, messed up things from his life that's led to this moment. I think Paul Dano just really killed it. Obviously, you know, he's cast a lot as weirdo characters, and so it's I don't want to like pick on the guy saying like he's just a weirdo in general, but he really does slip into that just so well. I'm kind of bummed that like there's some people behind me in the theater who like started to like chuckle a bit in certain, you know, line deliveries of his performance, but I was like, there's nothing really that funny about it. I mean, yeah, sure, he's doing something different than like he's starting to like kind of raise his voice and scream as opposed to like, you know, just him talking, but there's nothing really that funny about it. It's an excellent performance from him. Also, Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman is great. I like the simplicity of her mask, just the little pointed things out of the regular cut-up burglar mask. But she is still really great as the character. You know, she also serves a point in this narrative, and she and Bruce are tied in more ways than you would think. And I like the way that their paths have crossed here and how they kind of parallel each other's journeys. Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon, I think he's wonderful as this character. I do like Jeffrey Wright just has that voice that kind of works for, like, you know, a hardened, grizzled cop, you know. But this is still early on before he's like a commissioner, and people, when he brings in Batman, like, hey, this Riddler left some clues for you specifically, and I trust you. Why don't you come in and look at some of this crime scene stuff? And every other cop is like, what the fuck are you doing? What this guy's a weirdo, you know. This is at a time where the police still don't trust Batman completely, and Jim Gordon kind of knows that, but he wants to integrate Batman's help. They make a really great duo in this movie. I really enjoyed Jeffrey Wright as this character, and Andy Serkis as Alfred. Really great Alfred. There's a really, like, surprisingly kind of emotional scene between him and Bruce Wayne that I really loved. I think Andy Serkis is just a really good embodiment of this Alfred who is worried for Bruce all the time now. But knows there's nothing he can really do to stop it, but he wishes he could have. He wishes he could have done something else to have protected him or something like that. And he's just so good. And that scene with him and Robert Pattinson is just really touching. I haven't seen much of John Turturro in, like, ads for this movie or anything like that, so watching him in this movie was a real treat for me specifically because I got to see finally what his interpretation of the character of Falcone is, and he's just really good. He's like, you know, this slimy kind of like gangster guy he's really good at embodying that, and I think John Turturro is a great choice. And, you know, that character has more to do than you would think also, you know, impacting the narrative. So I really like that. It's played out, obviously, as like a detective thriller. You know, we have to investigate all these clues. It leads me to one person to the next, just, you know, with Batman characters, which is obviously, you know, great. Fits in with the noir stuff that I mentioned before. I was worried going in, you know, the little worry in the back of my head, like, is this too many villains? Are they going to be able to juggle it? But with a nearly 3-hour runtime where it moves so smoothly and there's not really anything I can picture being cut out, it absolutely works. And I can't wait to see more from some of them, you know, potential sequels if they do decide to make them, and also already announced, you know, HBO Max shows. They have like a GCPD show that's going to come out that's not Gotham, but Gotham, essentially, and a show based around Colin Farrell's Penguin. I can't wait to see more of him, especially because Colin Farrell just disappears, you know, like it's prosthetics done so well. And I've seen some people mention, like, you know, why can't you just cast someone who looks like that? Why do you have to bury Colin Farrell to where he's like unrecognizable? And there's a part of me that can kind of get that argument. But that being said, you know, the prosthetics work is absolutely amazing because he does become a completely different person just with a Colin Farrell way of delivering his lines. You know, it's kind of like, you know, we want the voice of Colin Farrell, we want that kind of acting, but just a different face. So I don't have that much of a problem, you know, with turning actors into different people with makeup. People have done it all the time in movies, and it's usually had some really great success, and him as the Penguin here is wonderful. You know, there's a car chase, especially if we can talk about action stuff now, between him and Bruce Wayne in the Batmobile. It's just so, it's probably the best, like, car chase in any Batman related thing. It's so cool and so, like, oh my gosh, you know, the camera, the way they shoot things, the way it's locked in at certain points, it's just so expertly detailed and so planned out. Everything worked about that car chase. It's just so cool, especially like when it's like dumping rain in the middle of the scene, but you can still see everything so clearly. In fact, the dumping of rain just adds kind of to the tension of it all. The action in general is really good as well. You know, obviously there's that bit in the trailer where they showed him just knocking the fuck out of this one guy in like clown makeup. And then obviously it just keeps getting better and better from there. The way, you know, the punches really land and the sound design is just really cool because you can feel the movement of the characters and just the hits that they're taking. It feels painful. Like you watch the movie and you can kind of feel the pain of it all too. There's one part in particular that's played for a laugh, but I was like, after initially chuckling, I was like, oh God, that feels, I can like feel it, even though I'm sitting here not experiencing, but I can feel exactly how Robert Pattinson is feeling right now. God damn. And that brings me to another thing, is that this movie, despite it being so dark and grimy, the city looks disgusting, but it looks great. You know, that's great set design work and just design work in general for the city. There is that bit of it where every once in a while some humor will sneak in, but it's not like hey yo, let's insert a one-liner or a quip just because there hasn't been a quip in a couple minutes or anything like that. It's just, the scene has been playing out, and this is a point where some levity could sneak in, and that's what they're doing. It's like cleverly and kind of very small scale humor just placed in just every once in a while, but in points where I thought it really worked. Like there's one point in particular, actually there's like a couple points with like Jim and Batman interacting where I was like, this is actually pretty fucking hilarious. I can't really sing this movie's praises enough. I don't want to spoil a lot of what they do here with the narrative and some surprise stuff, but I thought everything about this movie worked from the very beginning all the way to the very end. Very satisfying ending. It's a point where, if they ended it, that could be great, but if they want to make more, which they probably will because, the money is currently rolling in, I would be completely on board with seeing like a whole Matt Reeves trilogy of Batman stuff because he handled the characters here so well. He handled the narrative, the themes, the character arcs so incredibly well where I'm completely invested not just in these characters, but in Gotham, as a character itself. The writing is superb. The direction from Reeves is incredible. Greg Fraser doing the cinematography. Mwah, mwah. Every single shot looks so great. There's not one bit where I was like, oh, that's a weird cinematography moment. Everything looks good. There's a moment where Batman is gliding and they like attach the camera to him. It's like one of those kind of like I'm gliding in this, I assume mostly CGI landscape, but it looks so good too. Like there's not one moment where I was like, this looks fake, this looks so bad. It looks fantastic all the way through. So that's a great compliment to the visual effects team, the set designers, the practical effects, the costumes, Batman suit, the Riddler suit, all of this stuff, the cinematography and musical score by Michael Jacquino. When they announced that he was doing the score, I was like, I cannot fucking wait. He's like absolutely one of my favorite film composers at the moment. And there's just so many musical cues in this that is, it just works so well with everything going on. There's a couple bits where like horror strings will like, leak into the scene and it's, applied very smoothly and, it fits very well for the moment. But then there's moments where they, going back to the noir vibe, they really kind of hone in on like the kind of sound you would hear when, someone has met like a femme fatale or like, they're in a romance subplot. That's a lot of like Catwoman's musical theme in some scenes where she's in, where the strings will start to kick in that kind of romance, but it's kind of, suspenseful kind of way. It's hard to describe, but I just, oh my God, the way Jacquino works with his music, it's incredible. And his theme for Batman is amazing. I'm gonna give the Batman an A+. I love the narrative. I loved every single bit of work that went into this movie. Every performance worked for me. There was not one single weak link. I just love this movie so much. I can't wait to watch it again. Even though it is almost 3 hours long, I definitely want to see it again. If I can see it in theaters again, that would be wonderful. I'm totally up for doing that because what an experience seeing that was in IMAX nonetheless, where, the speakers are blaring, the screen is large and everything is right in your face. It's just such a fantastic movie with wonderful, wonderful craftsmanship behind it. It's a shame that we can't get this Batman in a DC cinematic universe. It honestly really is a big shame that we're kind of, not that I'm against Michael Keaton coming back, but it's just a shame that, this new version, which is so cool and has so many opportunities, not just for itself, but, you could maybe grow a whole world surrounding it. Instead, they're going to go back with, hey, remember Michael Keaton? He's back. But whatever. It's okay though. I just can't wait to see more in general. But if you've seen the Batman already, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.